Welcome back to Morning Express. It's now 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Time for us to get into the main subject of today. And of course, we're going to be focusing on children back to school. Grade 4, Standard 8 and Form 4 were returning to school yesterday. And that's what we'd like to look at. A quick reminder of that question that we're asking this morning. And we'd like to find out from you what your take is. Are you satisfied with the health safety measures in schools, even as students resume learning? Are you satisfied with the health and safety measures in schools, even as students resume learning? I'll read some of the comments that have come through and see what your take is. We have okay, your name is interesting, but I'll just go to the comment, and he said, no, never. We have Honorable Tyson, who says, I don't even know if the measures exist. Spraying kids once with one mask is not sufficient. Schools have no funds. I guess that will also allude to the fact that school fees is an issue for some of the parents, and of course the schools would need to run. And do let us know what your thoughts are. The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you'd like to tweet, Trix is at Trix Ngado. I am at Michael G. Gitonga. We'll be reading through your comments as we go along with the show. So, after over 7 months of anxious waiting in class, learning for grade 4, class 8 and Form 4 students resumed. However, there was a low student turnout as the Ministry of Education tries to jumpstart learning under tough COVID-19 guidelines. The ministry has also maintained that no child will be sent home for lack of fees, and the parents will have to buy their children masks for use in school.
For about 28 weeks now, students across the country have been grounded at home following the coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, the 7-month wait was finally over for Class 8 and Form 4 candidates, as well as Grade 4 pupils.
May I once again plead with our principals and head teachers to ensure that no child is sent home on account of school fees, both in the private and the public sector. I want to make it very clear that all children will start from where they left. For those children who may be pregnant, as we deal with the criminals, may I assure them that they have nothing to fear. They should come back to school. Teachers should be very, very empathic with them, giving them all the assistance. And when the time comes, they should be given the opportunity to go and give birth. And after winning, they shall come back and continue with learning.
However, the government threw parents under the bus with the mask question. The government has maintained that it will only cater for the needy students, but for others, parents will have to dig deeper into their pockets.
We may not have to provide masks for all the parents. And the position is that we shall provide masks for the less fortunate children.
The move by the government is a retraction from its previous promise to provide masks for all students when learning resumes. It is the first day of school since the COVID-19 break 7 months ago. And as you can see, the numbers are not yet full.
Out of the 183 students we expect to come, about 110 have so far reported since 6 in the morning. And we know there are those coming from upcountry.
Students also expressed their satisfaction with the resumption as they narrated challenges they faced during the homeschooling period.
The equipments for studying, like desks and chairs, are not there.
We live in a single-roomed house, and the house, it's the kitchen, it's the sitting room, it's the bedroom. So the space where you have to read is very small.
Elsewhere, learners in Mombasa County and other parts of the country also registered low numbers of students returning to school.
If we get a person, either a visitor or a child with a high temperature, we have an isolation room where they are being isolated, and every school has also been attached to a health center.
The reopening comes a week after final year students in the tertiary institutions resumed learning on Monday last week.
Right, so Are you satisfied with the health and safety measures put in schools as children go back to school? I'll go right into introducing the panel that we have this morning to discuss this subject. And we have Dr. Wakiaga, who's an education expert. We're joined by Reverend Yakio, who's a senior pastor at CITAM, but also today doubling up as a parent. We also have Professor Helen Inyega, who is an education policy expert. Ladies, thank you for joining us this morning, and welcome to the show. So I'll start with you, Reverend Yakio, as a parent. And did you take your children back to school?
My children are not in those classes that were reporting back to school yesterday.
Okay.
So no, I did not take them back.
If they were reporting, would you have been one of the parents to take them or not?
I'm starting to have a bit of confidence in what the government is doing. And so perhaps I would have, though I think I would have been in the category of the parents who watch to wait and see.
To wait and see.
They wait and see. Because I think a lot of parents have done that. They want to wait and see what will happen.
All right. And if you were to wait and see, what is it that you'd be waiting for? What exactly would you wait for government to do for you to be confident that now it's safe to take your children back to school?
I think one of the things I would be looking out for is to see whether the school that my children go to, whether they have put everything in place in terms of they have the hand washing places, they're ensuring the children are wearing their masks and all that. So those are some of the things I would want to see. Because knowing how children are, you can't contain them in one place. Even if you talk about social distancing, especially for the younger ages, it's a bit tricky. So I would want to see how they are going to do that.
All right. Let me come to you, Professor Helen. Your thoughts on the preparedness of schools and whether you feel that any parent who maybe feels like Reverend Yakio, that they would want to observe first and see, what would your message to them be?
Okay, thank you, Michael, for the opportunity. I think the schools are somewhat ready. I couldn't say they are 100% ready, but definitely measures have been put in place right from the time the principals and the head teachers were required to go back to schools. About maybe 4 weeks ago and about a week or so ago, the teachers were requested to go back to school. Bear in mind that even before COVID-19, our Kenyan education system has had challenges. You know, with the 100% transition, we know schools have not been operating at optimal. Combine that with COVID-19, I don't expect miracles to have happened in school, that there's 100% turnaround for the better, but definitely within their various means, schools are differently endowed with financial and material resources. I know there's likely to be differences, but to the best of their ability, teachers, I'm sure they have tried their best. There are ticking gaps here and there, but I'm sure schools have done their best, they have put their best foot forward, waiting to receive the children.
All right, and you've mentioned and said that they're somewhat ready. And would you be confident if you had children who were in that category of going back to school yourself to take them back? Because which parent wants to deal with somewhat? And to be honest and to be fair, it may not be possible for them to be 100% ready. There needs to be some level of agreement. So that somewhat that you're talking about, are you confident that it's time for us to go back to school?
I am confident that it's time for us to go back to school. Remember, parents are already, once the lockdown was lifted and the time to go back to work was extended, now more parents are going out anyway and coming back to their homes. And children, many of the children have now been going out to play with their friends in the neighborhood and all that. I think we are ready to have our children go back to school. Even if we wait 1,000 years, schools will never be 100% ready. Right. It is time for the children to go back to school. The government has, through the Ministry of Education, has certainly done their part, and they have been going around schools determining their readiness. Personally, I think the children are ready. The schools are ready to receive the children. We need to allow our children to go to school. I'm saying that, unfortunately, I'm not, my children, My children are not in that category yet. They're not in a fourth grade or eighth grade or form 4. But I would let my children go to school when eventually they allow the children to go back.
All
I
right.
think we need to put our best forward.
All right, and let me hear from Dr. Wakiaga your thoughts on this and whether you feel that we are ready to open up the schools, albeit in a phased manner.
Thank you, Gitonga, for inviting me. I think this is a very dicey and emotive issue as it stands as for now. One thing we all agree, and even the panel here agrees, is our children need to be back in school.
Right.
For me, I think this discussion should also encompass something more broad in terms of what is it that when we look at the preparations and we talk about such issues of access and equity, these are things that will always rear their heads all the time. And Professor Helen has alluded to that in her comments. Because when we talk about readiness, when we look at readiness, right now we have schools. If you look around, especially those in, can I say, the rural areas or somewhat far off areas, there are certain places where the rains have come and large areas are flooding, like the Rift Valley, where you have Lake Baringo that has flooded. You have in Nyando, schools are flooded. So I'm really thinking about those kinds of students and where will they be? What preparation is there for them? And when we talk about students coming back to school, we need to kind of broaden the spectrum of the space. When we talk about the space, you know, has it to be physically within a classroom, or are there social amenities surrounding the school or within the community that can act as stopgap measures to provide learning spaces for the kids?
For the children.
So the spirit is good that the schools are opening, but I think we also need to kind of have a bigger discourse with regards to issues of equity and access.
All right, and we'll come to that question of education, because one of the things that we should learn as a country is through COVID-19, what really we should be asking in terms of education. Let me come to you, Reverend Nyakio. You've had your children now home for 6 months, and well, for you, since yours are not yet back to school, you still have them at home. What are some of the key lessons that you're learning regarding our education system? And by education system here, I don't just mean the curriculum, but even the facilities which our children use for their education. What are some of the take-home, so to speak, that you've learned?
As a parent, being in this panel today as a parent, one of the things that I've come to really appreciate is our education system, and really to say that whoever came up with the schooling system had an idea from God, because when children are in a school, there's a lot they are learning. There's a lot they are protected from. When you hear some of the things that have been happening to our children, there's a lot our children are protected from. They are growing socially in terms of learning how to socialize within the community and among their peers. So those are some of the things we have appreciated. The fact that also as parents, if you're a career person, you don't have all the time at home to be with your child. You have to really create that time to get home with the child. But when you put them up in a school, you know they're well taken care of by the teachers that we have in our schools. And just once again to appreciate the teachers, man, they do an amazing job. Heads up to you teachers out there, we appreciate. And so those are some of the things that I've come to appreciate about our schooling system, even during this time of 6 months break.
Yeah, with the children. And now, given that you've been with your children for 6 months, are you finding it, there's some parents who are sighing a sigh of relief that their children are going back to school? For you, is it a sigh of relief, or are you feeling attached to them to a point where you don't want to release them because now you've already created a certain bond and a certain way of relating?
Yes, during these 6 months, as I had told you earlier, Gitonga, I became teacher mommy. I'm the one who teaches, who's supervising, checking out of homework, sending the homework to the children, because our children have been blessed to be in a school where we can send in, they've been learning virtually. And so there's that attachment that has come because of being with them. And so I'm in between there, because at some point I was very convinced I'm going into homeschooling, especially for one of the children who needs that kind of attention.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me come to you, Professor. And here's the thing. I think we have a certain mentality regarding our schools in terms of facility. And we, for want of a better way of expressing it, dump our children there for them to be educated, then pick them up at the end of the course and hope that they are now ready citizens for the world. Is this the idea that we should have for, our children? Professor Helen Inyega.
I am not sure that actually parents dump their children in school. When a parent takes a child to school, they surely hope the child will learn. And for the most part, our education system has delivered. We are all products of the same system. You and I have been able to excel in our various fields of endeavor. So really our education system, it does provide for the children to be able to do well in life. That said, the scenario in our schools is not perfect, and I have been saying that we actually need to take advantage of this COVID pandemic to improve our school system. There is always room for improvement. I know more can be done about our schools so that the children have a better environment to work in. All the systems are working. Think about the water system now, they need to wash their hands. Those are things that actually the government together with communities and parents can do collectively to ensure that our school system is better. It has never been perfect, particularly in public schools. And the further away you move from the cities, there are more challenges. And as Wakiaga has rightly said, think about contexts where now it's raining, like Baringo, and it's flooding. They definitely are challenges. They would be unique to different contexts, but we really have to put our hands together as families, as schools, and even the ministry so that we can make things better. All right. There is room for improvement.
All right, Dr. Wakiaga, coming to you. One of the things that COVID-19 has revealed to us is how unequal our education system is, particularly for those in the rural areas. What are some of the things and structures that you feel need to be put in place to ensure that we have a somewhat equal education system for all our children?
When you look at, and rightly so, when you look at those areas, whether it's in the rural, and then I also always talk about the urban areas where you have the high density areas in the urban areas. So those two, I find like there's a big challenge of issues of equity and access. For me, what I would really advise is there has to be a concerted effort whereby there is involvement of the parents. I always find it such a big challenge that, or I always feel that my concern is that parents, to me, especially in public schools, don't seem to play a very big role in the expectations that they want from their schools. And I think even when I've been on your show before, I have talked about even the National Parents Association. When you look at the National Parents Association and you scale or you cascade down into the county and sub-county level, how does this association play an important role in bringing awareness to the parents of how they can positively, objectively, and productively engage with their schools? Yesterday there was a video that was circulating. I'm sure probably Tonga you've seen it, where the girls went back to school and they were being sprayed up and down as they were reporting into the school. That was really a concern to me, because that kind of spraying is not being encouraged, because the kind of liquid that is being used is not even good for the skin. My question was, and I wondered, and I said, if my daughter was in that school, I would have been very offended, But my thing is, did the school sit with the parents to look at these measures that have been put in place and say, okay, for our own school, we are going to contextualize how we are going to open the schools in a manner that is satisfactory to me as a parent and is satisfactory to the school and is in line with the measures that the Ministry of Education has put in place. So when you look at areas that are challenged in terms of resources, where is the role of the parents? Where is the role of the community?
Right.
Because once again, as I just said earlier on, even when you look at the resources, and Professor said resources are never enough, and I agree with her. We all agree to that. But even in each local community, there's something that the local people can be able to contribute towards the school. But if they are not engaged, all these resources just go to waste.
They just go to waste.
So I think, yes, there has to be that structure where all the stakeholders really are brought together so there can be effective application of the community resources to support the school.
All right, Reverend Nyakio, your thoughts on how equipped parents are to even educate their children. That might be one of the gaps that we may have learned from this particular experience with COVID-19, how well-equipped parents might be, and especially when we look at the rural areas. If it is mathematics, some of the subjects that we need to educate our children, when we look at ourselves as parents, how do we ensure that we're well-equipped to even help them and become a good aid or a good complementary to what they're learning in school?
Thank you. I think one of the things that for me has happened during this time is also my learning curve has gone up. I've had to be more creative, and I think parents are called to be more creative where possible. Like if I'm teaching mathematics to my children, I look for visual aids. And the fact that this may not be accessible to everybody, but I've been able to go to YouTube, look for videos to help the child understand a little bit more. So I think for the parent, we have to grow to that level and not just relegate this duty to maybe the workers in the homes to do this for us. We have to be there. And what I like about the CBC curriculum, which my children are doing, is the fact that they really involve the child. The parent has to be involved in the learning process. And this has really been ingrained even during this time of COVID, because you have to be there, send the homework, talk to the teacher, and follow up on your child. So we really must be involved.
Okay, and coming back to you, Dr. Wakiaga, looking at now day one, yesterday was day one, today is day two of returning to school, and you've mentioned one of the things that, one of the videos that was doing rounds, it's clear that some schools may not even have that spray, for example. Others may not have where students can wash their hands. Others may not even have masks. What are some of the gaps that you feel that need to be filled as soon as possible before we get a second surge?
So this is where I think everybody has to come together, really, because from the clip you showed just before we started the discussion, you see that Professor Mago has said that only those children that are needy will be provided with masks. So when we talk about will be provided, means at this time they don't have the masks. So then it means, and yet they are already in school. So this means then there has to be a tightening of the belts, so to speak, because we do want our children back to school, but then some of these resources are missing. So the parents are going to be strained a little more to make sure they avail those masks. It's going to be tough for them.
Okay.
But I would also, and I'm thinking here, Gitonga, especially for the schools that are less fortunate. So this is where I think, there has to be the community rallying in, the local leaders. What are they doing to be able to support the schools? Issues of hand washing and providing. So because we say that it is said that even basic water and soap is just good enough to be able to at least mitigate the circumstances. So then the local communities really have to rally together and find a way, even if it is, and this is just my wild thought, kids coming in, maybe even with a kibuyu of water to wash their hands or something like that, if the hand stations don't exist.
Right.
You know, so those kinds of, it has to be an effort, and it will call upon people, families, local communities to tighten the belts, because we know because of issues of bureaucracy, by the time those masks eventually do get to schools, time will have gone, and COVID is not waiting for the masks.
Okay, and we are really out of time. So Reverend Wakio, your closing remarks, and maybe an encouragement to parents out there who may be having that attitude of let's wait and see, yet their children may be suffering, you know, a setback in terms of education. Your closing remarks on that.
Yeah, a couple of things just to say that the fact that the schools are opening, we need to support the government. I believe this is raising hope among the children because some of the children who thought they will still repeat the grade next year, it was starting to affect them psychologically. But just to believe and support that, let's support the government. Let's trust God for provision, because a number of parents are saying they don't have school fees to go back to school. We have the issue of school uniform. Our children have grown bigger since they came home. So the provision for school uniform and school fees. And just to know that as we take back our children back to school, we are also trusting that God will heal this nation. Amen. Thank you.
All right. And Professor Inyega, maybe just a closing remark. Sorry, I know we had a technical issue there, but very, very briefly, your closing remarks. Professor?
Yes, thank you. My closing remarks are that let's give hope a chance. There is still room for improvement. I know the government has done its best and the teachers are actually ready. Let's support the teachers to the best of our ability, and I know it's going to be better. As the Reverend has said, let's trust God that there will be provision and things will turn around for the better. It's never too late. Let's keep hope up.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Wakiaga, very, very briefly, your closing remarks, please.
It's good that our schools are open. What I would really advise is there has to be some quality assurance measures just to keep track of what is going on in the schools, and where the gaps are coming up, can make remedial measures be put in place so that we are learning as we move along and actually closing those gaps so that we can bring a sense of normalcy once again back to our schools amidst the COVID.
Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us this morning. That's Dr. Wakiaga, who's an education expert, Reverend Yakio, who is a senior pastor at Sitam, but this morning as a parent, Professor Helen Inyega, who is education policy expert. Thank you for joining us this morning just to take a good look at our school education system, but more so as our children go back to school in a phased manner. We're going to take a short break right here, 2 minutes after 8, but do stay with us. We have more lined up for you right here on Morning Express.